Welcome to the BuyBox Experts podcast. We bring to light the unique opportunities brands face in today's e-commerce world.
Welcome to the BuyBox Experts podcast. This episode is brought to you by BuyBox Experts. BuyBox Experts takes ambitious brands and makes them unbeatable. Big brands hire because of one word: holistic. When you bring them on, you receive the strategy, optimization, and marketing performance to succeed on Amazon. They are the only agency that combines executive level insights with expert tactical performance management and execution of your Amazon strategy. Today on the BuyBox Experts podcast, we have Mike Zagare from PPC Entourage with us. We had Mike on just a little bit ago to talk about the 12 days of nuggets, but we're excited to bring him back and to chat a little bit about advertising with us. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back, and so glad to be here.
Awesome. Mike, I'd love for you to, for those that didn't listen to the last one and didn't hear a little bit about your background, just jump in here and share a little bit about yourself and how you came to start and run PPC Entourage.
Yeah, right on. So I tell people that I'm a recovering physical therapist. I was doing that for about 10 years, and I had a physical therapy business treating seniors in their homes. And it was great. I love to help people out, but it really wasn't a good business model. And I had a business coach who said, listen, you are just spinning your wheels. Like, this business model is not that great. You got a lot of energy. I see you doing importing and exporting. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Importing and exporting. 2 days later, I found an ad on Facebook, and it was all about drop shipping. And my journey as an Amazon seller started. I started doing drop shipping, retail arbitrage, online arbitrage. And then obviously I didn't settle. I went for private labeling and started my own Amazon business. And we did really well with that business. And the reason why we did really well with that business was because of Amazon advertising. Now, back in the day, Amazon advertising was really basic and really simple, which was really good for me at the time because I was a novice at learning all of this stuff. So I consider myself someone who's always learning and growing. And I love to position myself as someone who is just like the average Amazon seller. I'm in there myself, figuring things out, learning as I go. And I love to help other Amazon sellers do the same thing. So that's where PPC Entourage came about. And one of those crazy moments in an entrepreneur's life where you just get into something and you're kind of naive at the point of it. And I said, you know what? Why not make a software to help Amazon sellers out? And that was 2016. And here we are today. Now we have the software. We have a couple softwares actually, and we help out a lot of sellers with managing their accounts.
That is a fantastic journey. It's very similar to the journey here at BuyBox Experts and the entrepreneurial path that I took to starting BuyBox Experts. So excited to get into the meat of this here. Let's talk a little bit about when you very first started PPC Entourage and you came out with the software. And I think that was meant to be kind of a self-service application. Correct me if I'm wrong. But now you have a huge kind of managed services portion to your business. Explain what that is.
Yeah, so it evolved over time. When we first started, it was very simple. We wanted a way to simplify the dreaded spreadsheet. I still hate spreadsheets. And I know that a lot of sellers don't like them either. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to look at spreadsheets. And if that's your thing, go for it. It does work. But for me, I looked at a spreadsheet and I was like, I don't really want to learn this. It doesn't make me feel good. It's not something that I'd rather focus on products and all the other aspects of the business that help to grow the business. So we wanted a way to simplify the spreadsheet. And essentially at first it was bid optimization, but also finding those opportunities, all of the different search terms and all of the different ASINs that you could then leverage in the other ad types. And back in the day, it was just sponsored product ads. So it was really simple. We had 4 different campaigns you can set up. One kind of fed into the other. We made this blueprint series. A lot of sellers used it to grow their business. And then it got a little bit more complicated. They added sponsored brand ads, sponsored display ads. There's all these different options, all these different targeting options. There's product display, there's product targeting, ASIN targeting. And then at that point, we realized that managing this for sellers was definitely something or an area we wanted to pivot to because it was becoming overwhelming. And I think a lot of sellers realized that since this is what we do, this is our bread and butter, we could handle this aspect of their business and they can go and do the things that really grow their business that they're good at.
That's fantastic. Now you have an additional portion to your services that's also kind of on the marketing side, which lends really well to advertising. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah. Well, we really have a margins tool that we work with. The margins tool is a tool that we built that really helps sellers know their numbers. So this tool like basically goes in and like a ninja like goes in and finds out exactly how much money you're actually making in your business, and it breaks down by a SKU level and shows you where you're sort of bleeding money. And it could be FBA fees, it could be promo fees, it could be all sorts of fees. So we start with that as the foundation, and it gives us a lot of insight into the health of a business and also where there's too much energy because the money is just not there. The products are just not profitable. And some of that intensity, some of that energy could be going elsewhere in the business. So we use that tool as the foundation of our advertising agency. And then we help sellers to realize opportunities through this tool. And then we also have the advertising agency side of it to help drive more traffic. Currently, we don't run any outside traffic. We don't use Facebook or Google ads. We strictly stick with internal traffic on Amazon and help sellers leverage that to their best potential.
Can you talk a little bit more about bid optimization? You said, when starting out, your tool is like primarily about bid optimization. What does that mean for our listeners?
Yeah, so that's a loaded term, but in its simplistic form, what we're trying to do is optimize the bid to reach our target goal. So, for example, let's say that our target goal is to break even and you have 30% margins. So that would mean a 30% ACOS. And there is a optimal bid that you can optimize that bid down to on a keyword level in order to reach that 30% ACOS. Now, I like to break it down and make it even more simplistic. We call it the max cost per click, or the max bid rather. So the max bid is a simple formula. And essentially what it does is it looks at your target ACOS. And for this example, let's say that it's break even. And let's say that you have a $10 product and you have a 40% profit margin. That means your break even point is $4. So you are trying to get a break even sale. That means you can spend $4 on advertising. Now we also look at the number of clicks it takes to get a sale. Let's say it takes 2 clicks to get a sale. So in order to break even, you have to spend $2 per click to break even on that sale. So that is bid optimization, like in a nutshell. And yes, it is more nuanced than that because Amazon allows you to target placements now, like top of search and product detail pages. There's all these different factors that come into play. It's not quite cut and dry like that. There's ad rank, there's conversion percentage, there's click-through rate percentage, and there's also different strategies that you can implement to get a little bit more nuanced in your bid optimization. But ideally, you're trying to match your target ACOS and your target goals for that advertising campaign.
I love that you're starting here on the margin side and working your way backward. I think that's incredibly important, and it's essential to actually understanding the money that you can allocate towards your advertising budget. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what you've seen sellers or brands do, the mistakes that they've made in spending and not being profitable?
Yeah, there's a lot of mistakes, and I've made them myself. Essentially, what we look at is the organic to PPC sales ratio. Now, obviously, we want to get to the point where most of our sales are coming in organically because those are going to be our profitable sales. And lots of sellers, including myself, have the philosophy of breaking even on advertising. Not all sellers. Some sellers want to make money and profit on advertising, or some sellers want to go into the red a little bit and are willing to go a little bit deep to get sales another way. But what we like to do is to break even on our advertising and then get to the point where we're 80-20, 80% organic, 20% through PPC. And the important thing to look at when you're going towards that is to make sure that your ad spend margin impact is not impacting your margins on a product level too much. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you are spending on your ads, and you get to the point where the ad spend for that particular SKU is eating away at your profits by like 20 to 25% because of the amount of ad spend. That could be a little bit too much for that SKU. That could mean at the end of the day, you don't have a lot of profitability left over. This is why it's super important to know your numbers. And what we tell sellers is we're looking to get towards that 80-20 principle where 80% of your sales are coming organic, 20% through PPC, but also have a limit in terms of your ad spend margin impact or your true ACOS. So that is between 6 and 15% we find is the sweet spot. Now, if you look at that 6 to 15%, that is your true ACOS. If it's lower than 6%, that could mean that you're underutilizing advertising. meaning there's probably some opportunities that you're not taking advantage of. If you're above that 15%, that could mean that your profit margins are suffering because you're spending too much. And this could mean you need to optimize a little bit more and just see where you're starting to bleed some money.
I love the philosophy here, right? Understanding what your true philosophy is on paid search, and that you're trying to obtain a break even on ads, and working with your brands and whether they agree with that philosophy or not. We view things in terms of ROAS, which is basically the inverse of ACoS, and we're constantly preaching to the brand partners that we work with that you should be looking at both the direct ROAS, but also total ROAS, which looks at both organic and paid ROAS from your advertising. You need to look at both figures to understand holistically how well advertising is driving direct results and indirect results for your business. So I love that you're getting into that. Do you look at that on a SKU by SKU basis? And do you also look at that holistically across the business for the brands you work with?
Yeah, it's super important to look at that on a SKU by SKU basis. Also, it's important to know that every SKU has a life cycle. So for example, when you're first starting out, you likely are going to have the inverse of the 80-20, where 80% of your sales are coming through advertising. But what we're doing is we're getting data, we're getting sales, we're getting visibility, we're getting rank, we're getting all of that stuff. And then over time, hopefully we'll get to the 80-20 in the right way, where most of our sales are coming through PPC sales. Then once it starts to mature, you really have to start to look at it at a different level. Like, what are the opportunities? Do you want to stick at a certain ACoS or a certain ROAS, or do you even want to go a little bit more aggressive with that SKU? Because what opportunities might you be leaving on the table? And this is where we look at the search term report. We look at brand analytics. We look to see where there are opportunities to scale. And we start to make decisions based on the lifetime customer value and the organic ROAS and the PPC ROAS. And we look at the full picture during that life cycle of a SKU. So it starts off, maybe you're going to lose a little bit of money. Your ACoS and your ACoS is high, your ROAS is low. Eventually, you want to get to that sweet spot, but then you want to look at what are the benefits of that ad spend. It is not just like I spend this money and I make this money back. There's a lot that goes into it. There's the whole flywheel effect. There's the reviews. There's all of that. There's the data you get. There's the intelligence you get. And what you do with that really matters in the end.
I love that you're bringing up LTV, or lifetime value of the customer. I recently spoke at the Virtual Prosper show, and I gave a presentation on strategy for advertising. We talk a lot about the tactics of advertising, and people, I think they conflate tactics with strategy. And really, strategy for advertising is about like the approach and philosophy that you take. And in order to do that, in order to be able to expand your advertising and grow your brand, you have to segment what your strategy is. And typically you divide that into segments over time, right? You might be in a discovery phase and you might be unprofitable on your advertising for the first year or 6 months. Then you get into more of an optimization phase. And then you get into like a harvesting where you're very profitable because you have all the data and you also have achieved scale and kind of brand recognition. Both of those things combined means you can be very profitable. And so you can do different things. Your strategy changes over time, depending upon how well you've matured with your brand recognition and with your advertising and the data you have. How do you capture LTV? How do you do that? Because that's a difficult thing to do on Amazon based upon the last touch attribution nature of the platform.
So there's a couple of things that it is very difficult to capture. There's a couple of things you can look at inside of the brand analytics report. And there's a couple of advanced metrics you can follow and track. A couple of things I like to follow is I like to follow subscribe and saves. If that's something that is good for your product, if it's a consumable product, follow subscribe and saves. New to brand order. I would also follow the returning customer percentage inside of the brand analytics report. So this is interesting because you can see how many times people are coming back to purchase your product over and over again. Now, in terms of the lifetime value of that customer, it's really hard to know precisely how much that is worth to a brand. But you can start to use these other metrics to really see what are the value of spending money on sponsored brand ads, of doing discovery-based campaigns, of even doing brand protection campaigns, because what if you lose that customer? You start to think about all these different things. And then I think the ultimate thing would be able to come up with that full lifetime value of the customer, which to my knowledge right now is very hard to calculate. But I know that if you start to look at these other metrics, you can start to see the value of advertising in a different light and not just looking at ACOS, which I think a lot of sellers do, is they just look at ACOS and they're missing the fuller picture of what that ad spend is doing.
I agree. Totally agree with you. I think one of the problems with just looking at ACOS is what it does is it drives you to simply spend on bottom funnel terms typically. And so they're missing those mid and top funnel terms, and they're overlooking the entire customer journey. Do you want to explain your philosophy and understanding as how you target the customer through different parts of the customer journey and what that looks like, and how you explain that to a brand so they can understand it?
Right. So this is interesting because Amazon traditionally is a place where people go to buy. So by nature, it's lower in the funnel of the customer journey. But what we mean by the customer journey is, I'll give a quick example. You can go through a customer journey in 2 minutes, 2 months, 2 years, 10 years. But it's basically this a life cycle of the customer in discovering the problem that they want to have solved, and then considering the different solutions to help solve that problem, and then finally making that purchase decision, and then also coming back to potentially purchase again. So when you think about this with Amazon advertising, I would say that the most important thing is to be in tune and in touch with all of the different ad types that are available to you as a brand owner. So go in there, look at sponsored product ads, look at sponsored brand ads, look at sponsored display ads, and then start to look at where they show up. Because then you could put yourself into the mind of a shopper and also the mind of where that shopper is in the customer journey. And you could start to craft ads that meet the shopper where they are. So for example, sponsored brand ads is traditionally really great because it shows up at top of search. It also now shows up on product detail page, but you can bring more awareness to your actual brand. Now, these are not the most lower, these are more high funnel, more top of funnel, and you can have ads that just like draw awareness to your storefront, and so that they can see all of your different products. And you can position that across different audiences or different ASINs, and some of these shoppers may or not be in the market for your particular product, but because you're doing a discovery-based ad, when they may want to buy your product, now they know who you are. So to me, that is a great use of sponsored brand ads in the discovery phase of the buying cycle. Now, it's important to note that these likely aren't going to be super profitable. If you look just at ACOS, these may be a higher ACOS type of campaign. But of course, now what you're doing is you're getting that awareness, and then you're getting people to know your brand, know, like, and trust you, or at least be aware of you. And then you can serve them ads in other areas of the buying cycle, the consideration phase, the purchase decision phase, the low-hanging fruit, which traditionally is sponsored product ads, typically is the lowest part of the funnel. And you could also do sponsored display ads, which is a whole new world right now.
Do you want to talk about the difference between sponsored display ads and product display ads? I think there's a lot of confusion for brands that aren't very familiar with those advertising units.
Yeah, so product display ads was an ad type that was around many years ago inside of Vendor Central. And now it's, I don't use Vendor Central, so I don't think it's still there. I think now it's sponsored display ads. I could be wrong about that, but it's very similar in terms of the positioning of where they show up. When I think about sponsored display ads, there's actually two different types of audiences or two different types of targeting you can choose. You can choose the audience targeting, which is really great to target people who are looking for your product or something similar to your product, targeting them on Amazon and off Amazon. So essentially, these are like billboard ads that are going on Amazon and off Amazon. Some of them are customizable, some of them are not. Then there's also product targeting. So sponsored display product targeting, which is where you're taking your ad and you're showcasing it on a particular product, on its product detail pages. You can follow that ad in search, but that product in search, but you're showcasing in these really great locations. And to my point before, if you know where these ads show up, you could start to really craft some really good copy and also custom images for those ads. So sponsored display is like the newest one. Amazon is putting a lot of energy and intensity into this year. I would highly suggest going in there. And the most important thing you can do is look at all the definitions of the targeting and where these ads show up, because all of this will help you start to craft a strategy for your ads. The targeting really matters. The verbiage they use really matters. The techniques you can use for each ad type really matters. When you know this stuff and when you know where your ad is going to show up, you can really have an advantage over your competition when you're going to craft your strategy.
How do you think this plays to the evolution of the Amazon advertising platform? Are we going to see additional developments in this way that allows for more customization of the actual the images and the content that's in the advertising units themselves? I mean, when you look at the history of sponsored products and then sponsored brands, there's very strong limitations around what's done there compared to the other advertising platforms in Google and Facebook and other paid social methods where you have lots of flexibility. Are we going to see that on Amazon continue to develop?
I would say absolutely yes. This is something that's going to happen. Compared to those other platforms, Amazon is in its infancy at this stage. It has developed so much, but if you go into Google, you'll see so many options. And even if you go into DSP, which is Amazon's demand side platform, you'll see so many options. And what they're doing is they're bringing some of those options and making them available to all sellers inside of the advertising platform. You know, for example, the other day, they released 2 new targeting options for sponsored display ads, which is retargeting. You're retargeting people who have looked at your product but haven't purchased in 30 days, or looked at your competitor's product but haven't purchased your product in 30 days. That wasn't available a couple weeks ago. So I'm thinking that they're going to start to add all these different features. It will become more complex. And to me, that is an advantage for sellers who are looking to take advantage of all of the new features and all of the new ad types.
Does that make brands more dependent upon agencies like yourself, like buy box experts, or any of your competitors out there? How does that change the game for brands wanting to kind of do the DIY approach on Amazon?
I think it does change the game a little bit because it's becoming, man, the game has changed so much in the last couple of years where we used to just set up some auto campaigns and manual campaigns and had some simple like 4 campaigns. That was enough for one person to manage. But now you really have to be diligent with the opportunities that Amazon gives to you. There's so many opportunities. And if it's not something that you're doing every single week, I think you're going to be missing out on some of those opportunities, especially if you're a brand that's doing more than $1 million in revenue. So yes, I do think that eventually it's going to be something where you either bring somebody in-house who's doing this part-time or full-time, or you hire an agency that knows these different ad types and the different opportunities, knows branding, knows how to target shoppers in the buying cycle, all of those different things, so that you can get more traffic and more awareness of your brand.
As Amazon's advertising volume increases, and it seems to be increasing exponentially, there's a lot of trade-off here in advertising on Amazon versus the budget that you normally would have allocated to other channels, like let's say Google or Facebook. How does a brand look at that, right? How should they be developing their strategy given they have other platforms where they've traditionally advertised? And now you see this huge push towards the Amazon marketplace and a really, really strong momentum pushing the advertising platform as well on Amazon. How does a brand look at that cohesively and develop an overall advertising strategy that takes part in both paid social, search, and Amazon advertising?
Yeah, so that's a loaded question, and it's going to be different for each brand owner. My idea of taking advantage of internal traffic, that's where I feel like the most amount of sellers can really get the best benefit right away. So taking advantage of Amazon's internal traffic where people are ready to purchase. Once you have that dialed in, or at least have a system to continuously expand that, then go past that and do all sorts of ads and even find out where your audience is hanging out. Like, are they hanging out in different chat groups, and can you meet them there and answer their questions questions and help them out in certain ways? Are they on social platforms? Like, where can you meet them and deliver your ads or deliver some value to them so that when they come back on Amazon and they see your ads, they're more likely to purchase? So my answer to that would be to take advantage of internal traffic, the lowest hanging fruit, and then start to leverage the power of like display ads, going outside of Amazon with DSP ads and all that kind of stuff, and then layering on Facebook ads and social media ads. And there's so many different types of ads, but that would be, to me, the natural evolution of a brand owner on Amazon.
So to put it another way, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you're basically saying start at kind of bottom of the funnel and work your way up as your budget allows you. Is that correct?
Yes. That's how I would say, because the ROAS on Amazon is going to be much higher, traditionally much higher than ad spend from Facebook or Google. It's still much higher. So take advantage of that first, make sure that's dialed in, and then start to branch out slowly. I think, I've gotten into trouble myself with this, started to just branch out into multiple different countries and multiple different ad types, and just tried to do so much at once that I wasn't taking advantage of Amazon and what was working the best for me, which was Amazon.
There's a lot of value to the first party data that Amazon has compared to matching your advertising units to what someone likes. For instance, if you were going to be using a lot of the tools that Facebook has. On Facebook, you're going to be looking at all these different interests that a person has, but on Amazon, with their DSP platform, you could advertise in front of people who have purchased a product similar to yours, right? Or you can start to see trends that show this person who buys Harry Potter wands also buys your product. Like, how valuable is that data compared to what we've had in the past? And what are the things that we're going to be able to do moving forward with it?
So that data is so valuable. I mean, if people are on Facebook, they're not looking to purchase. They're looking to browse, they're doing other things, and you have to direct their attention and attract their attention in another way. You could target their interests and all sorts of things like that. But on Amazon and through DSP, you can target people who have a bigger interest in making that purchase. You could target your competitors' listings and ASINs. You can do so many different things. So that there is interest there. That they have at least an awareness of this product. And there's so many things you could do with that. So I think that data is really valuable. In fact, I think that that's going to be really a big advantage for sellers, is to dive into DSP. And traditionally that's been a block because I think you had to spend about $35,000 just to get access to it. And now there's different agencies that have access to it. You can start to spend, a little bit at a time and work your way into DSP over time and work on the low hanging fruit. When we work with DSP, we like to work on the low-hanging fruit first. So this is working on retargeting shoppers who have been to Amazon and already have searched our product or have searched a competitor's product. We can target them through DSP. That ad spend is likely going to be a lot better spent than ad spend on Facebook. It's just much more low-hanging fruit. So that data is super important. Of course, you can also do discovery-based campaigns on DSP as well, and you could target interests and audiences and lookalikes and all sorts of things like that. But I like to start off with the low-hanging fruit, which is the shoppers who have already shown an interest in that product.
Very, very interesting. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen as the progression of competition on the platform? Are we seeing a lot of kind of institutional money come into the platform now and PPCs rise at a more accelerated rate, or has it been a really steady increase in the cost per click and cost per impression on the platform?
Yeah, so there's been a rise in people coming onto the platform, but when we look at our data over the last 4 years, the actual average cost per click for sponsored product ads has not gone up that much, according to all the people using PPC Entourage, which is really, really good and nice to know. I mean, our ACoS too has been steady as well. So that could be a combination of things. Obviously, there's more competition and certain keywords have gone up to the point where it's probably not profitable to some sellers. But then also there's more relevancy now. So where in the past we were probably targeting like broad match and multiple search terms and keywords and maybe getting some junk traffic. Now Amazon system has much more relevancy, and there's also much more placements. There's more opportunities. There's more ad units. So there's a rise in the amount of bigger brands coming in, but there's also more ads to go after, more keywords. There's more shoppers than ever before. Each shopper is searching for new and unique things. So you can dig into the search term report and you can go after those opportunities. And as long as you're not getting lazy and going after just like the most expensive ones, you can see an average cost per click that's not too crazy. So in answer to your question, it hasn't impacted the trends haven't been too crazy in terms of a rise in average cost per click or a rise in ACoS. It's actually been pretty steady over the years.
Let's say you're a brand just getting started on the Amazon channel. You've been selling your product to a bunch of different distributors. They've been selling the product on Amazon. You've finally decided that you need to own the channel yourself. You've done the effort to clean it up, which is not an easy thing to do. And now you're starting to sell on the channel. Well, what advice would you give to a mid-market or enterprise level brand just entering the channel now, just starting to explore the different opportunities with advertising?
I would say the number one thing is to start off with sponsored product ads and get that really dialed in first. So this way you can start to get the flywheel effect going. That's going to be your lowest hanging fruit, but that's also going to feed into the other ad types. And what I mean by that is the search term report is absolutely a gold mine. So I would start there and then really dial that in. And then once you do, start to scale that out and go into sponsored brand ads. Build out a storefront. That is really critical. I think Amazon's going to be using the storefront much more in the future. If you go to your storefront detail page, you'll see, and your data page, you'll see that there's a lot of organic traffic and traffic that just gets to that storefront, and you get a lot of sales that way. So building out your storefront, and there's certain ads that only show up if you have a storefront. So I would do that as step number 2, build out your storefront, make sure you get some sponsored brand ads up there. And then also equally as important is the sponsored display ads and making sure you get that retargeting in, and then also protecting your brand. So going throughout the entire thing. But it really starts with sponsored product ads. That's the foundation of everything, getting into that low hanging fruit and getting that data.
What about from a budgeting perspective? How would you advise a brand like that to start out with their budgeting? And then how do you help brands understand this need to kind of look at like a break-even approach on their paid search on the channel?
Right. Yeah. So the budgeting, in terms of the amount of spend going to sponsored product ads, initially, most of it would go there. As the brand matures, about 70% would go towards sponsored product ads, 20% towards sponsored brand ads, and 10% towards sponsored display. Now that could change over time because I really feel like sponsored display is becoming a much more valuable ad type. So the most important thing is to showcase the get behind the actual numbers and really dig into the numbers on a SKU by SKU basis. So let me give you an example. We try to target a 30% margin on a SKU by SKU basis. And this was brought up in the book Profit First for Each E-commerce Sellers by Cindy Thomason. And essentially, if you have a 30% profit margin, you can put 10% back into your business, 10% back into your pocket and pay your salary, and then 10% into new product development. If you don't have a 30% profit margin, you're going to start to get into a bit of a trouble. So then knowing that information, you can then look at all of the different aspects of your advertising approach to see where you want to allocate that budget, and if it's causing you to spend too much money on advertising, and then grow from there. So we'll take an ad budget, and we will predominantly go with sponsored product ads first, but then we'll also look at which SKUs are overspending based on their ad spend margin impact and make sure that we can tailor that back a little bit so we can push some ad spend elsewhere. So it's very unique and different on a brand by brand basis, and you really have to dig into the SKUs to see where that allocation goes.
Let's talk about some kind of different scenarios here, just some hypotheticals. So Sure. Let's say you are a challenger brand and you are looking to gain market share and become much more competitive with some of the market leaders in your category or subcategory. How are you going to advise a brand in that situation versus the leader in the space who's trying to maintain their market share and protect their brand on the channel?
Right. So if you're a challenger brand, that means you have to overcome some of the brand awareness that the other brand has as well. So what you can start to do is really get really creative with sponsored brand ads. Now, this is an ad type that is not overly, it's there's a lot of low hanging fruit with sponsored brand ads once you start to dig into it. So I would say heavily focus on sponsored brand ads and get that awareness out there so that you as a challenger can start to bring more awareness to your brand. That's what that ad type is there for. Of course, if you want to utilize all the other ad types as well, you can also then target that brand. If you have deeper pockets, you can be, as the challenger, target that brand with product targeting ads. And this way you can help to make people aware of your brand. So for example, let's say you're a challenger brand, but you have some kind of a benefit or some kind of benefit over your competition. You can then target them on their own product detail page, and you can highlight that in your sponsored brand ad or your sponsored display ad through your copy, through your imagery. There's all sorts of things that you can do to start to get a rise in the market space. So that's one thing. If I was the leader in the category, then I would just dominate. I would go in there. I would outbid the competition. I would make sure I leverage all the different ad types. I would make sure that I look at the search term report, ASIN reports, all that kind of stuff, and look into what's working and expand and scale and just continuously do that over a period of time and take advantage of the new opportunities.
Wow, that is a lot of information packed in there. I hope everyone's paying attention to that. If you weren't, just rewind and play again, because I think that's critically important to understand the difference here and some of the similarities in the approach to whether you are a market leader or not, and some of the things that you should be prioritizing. Let's talk about the marketing and some of the preparation that is crucial to having effective advertising. I mean, you mentioned a couple of times now leveraging the copy, images, video, other things like that in order to draw consumer interest to your products from some of your competitors and their products, really highlighting the unique value proposition of your own product line. It's in order to do that, you have to have great product listings. So what are some of the things that a brand should be critically aware of about enhancing their product listing? As you have advertised, what have been some of the key differences you've seen in helping a listing convert and having it ready to really expand the advertising volume that you drive to that listing?
Yeah, so Amazon calls this having a listing that is retail ready. And it's important to have a really good retail ready listing. And I think the most important thing is to know your brand, to know your brand message, to know what really resonates with your audience. The more you know your audience, the more you have a strong foundation for your advertising to work. And branding is absolutely the foundation of that. So what you can do is you can study branding. You can study your brand message. You can improve your listing as much as possible. You can even go and look at where your audience is hanging out and get ideas as to what resonates with them and bring some of that messaging onto your listing, bring some of those images onto your listing, and work slowly over time to improve your conversion rate. Obviously, 50% of the game is conversion rate. So if you can incrementally improve your conversion rate over time, your ads are going to perform so much better. You're likely going to have a lower cost per click, and it's going to save you a lot of time and money in the future. So there's a lot that goes into it. You could do things like going into the customer search term report and looking to see what customers are searching for, just getting into the mind of the shopper. Go into the reviews, listen to how they speak, listen to their vernacular, put that into your listing. The more you invest in understanding your audience, the better everything is going to be. And the more customizable you can make your ads as well. You can really speak to them. I saw a couple of ads the other day that were really I could tell they mentioned it was a food-based product, like a tool for your kitchen. And they mentioned the word foodie. And I could tell they really knew their audience and they were using the vernacular the right way to resonate with that audience. That's what you have to start to do to get better conversions and to get the word out there and better branding.
I love that. It's a very holistic approach to it, and it really takes into consideration the entire customer journey. And when you think about the entire customer journey of an individual becoming aware of a need and then searching for a solution to satisfy that need and seeing your brand and your products and then making the connection that can be the solution for whatever need they have. You need to match the same feeling in which they discovered you as to where they're going to purchase you. And so a lot of the work that is done in optimization is not only about does your listing rank, but more about does it convert well and does it match the same style and feel as when someone found you off platform, right? So for instance, someone finds you in Google or in Facebook and goes to your site. Are you displaying the same sort of brand feel there as you are on Amazon? Because that's the customer journey. Customers don't just go to Amazon and buy there or just go to your site and buy there. They're hopping back and forth, right? And they're checking out a review site and they're checking out a competitor site and they're checking all these different things. And if you have parity of brand messaging across all of those advertising units and those product listing images and content off and on Amazon, then you're going to have higher conversion, dramatically higher conversion from what it would have been.
Right. Yeah. The word that comes to me is congruency. If you have congruency in your market to message to market match and your brand, that's going to be a great thing. And then there's also, you could see Amazon making the play for Amazon Lives and Amazon Posts. And you can also, in your Amazon storefront, you can use all of this to showcase your brand, to get your brand message out there. And I think there's going to be a lot more of that in the future. And I'm so excited to see how that evolves.
So wrapping this up, tying a bow around it, I wanted to end with asking you about what should a brand expect when they start working with an agency like yours, right? I mean, how quick do they tend to see progress in their advertising? And does that come in stages?
Yeah, it comes in stages. The first and most important thing is to make sure that we're on the same page. So we really want to make sure that the communication is great and that there's no expectation gaps in terms of what to expect. We want to make sure that we look at all aspects of their business. We show them what's working, what's not working, and then we work with them to first capture the low-hanging fruit. We like to start off with some really quick wins, capture that low-hanging fruit, and then go from there. And then really work with them to understand their brand, understand their audience, and to develop a strategy to start to create sponsored brand ads, sponsored display ads, all these different ad types to really resonate with their audience. So we have a system in place where we follow 28 different types of campaigns. Not all those campaigns are going to be good for where the SKU is at or where the brand is at where they're coming, to see us, but we will find the very best types of campaigns for that SKU or for that brand and start to develop that strategy with them. So in terms of the turnaround time, it's totally different for each brand. Some brands you'll see that they just have not been taking advantage of some of the lower hanging fruit. Traditionally, this is like when you see the ad spend margin impact as less than 6%. I'll dive into an account and be like, oh my gosh, they're only at 2% ad spend margin impact. They only have 3 campaigns. Of course, they need some help here. And then that type of account is really easy to scale because easily to start to get some results right away because you find that low hanging fruit. And then there's other brands that are really doing a good job but haven't taken advantage, or maybe are just getting too consumed with working with it. And then we can find some other opportunities and slowly build it over time. But for the most part, I think most brand owners are a bit overwhelmed with all the new ad types and new types of reports and need some help with an agency to help them really maximize Amazon advertising.
Well, you have been listening to Mike Zagare from PPC Entourage on the Buy Box Experts podcast. Mike, I want to give you a big thank you for coming on. It's been an illuminating conversation. I think we've all learned a ton about the different advertising opportunities, tactics, and strategy on the Amazon channel. And we want to thank our listeners for joining to the Buy Box Experts podcast. This episode is brought to you by Buy Box Experts. Buy Box Experts takes ambitious brands and makes them unbeatable. They have a team of consultants that will identify key low-hanging fruit for some of your best-selling products on Amazon, and you will receive the strategy, optimization, and marketing performance to succeed on the channel. Thank you so much, Mike. We loved having you on for our listeners today.
Thank you, everyone.
And now to finish today's podcast, I'd like to share some final thoughts. For third-party sellers to be successful on Amazon, a critical lever will be soliciting feedback from customers. We at BuyBox Experts are really big fans of the team at Ecom Engine and its tools that help Amazon sellers to simplify the process of messaging customers of Amazon orders. To learn more, go to ecomengine.com. And with that, I want to thank you for listening today, and I look forward to joining you next time on the BuyBox Experts podcast.
Thanks for listening to the BuyBox Experts podcast. Be sure to click subscribe, check us out on the web, and we'll see you next time.